Welcome to today's deep dive. I am super excited you're joining us because we are looking at something today that could, honestly, completely change how you view your own neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a total paradigm shift.
It really is. So the source material you brought us today is this fascinating set of conceptual notes, and they propose something called an abundance network.
Which is just a great term.
Right. And the mission of our deep dive today is to really figure out how communities might better connect unused resources and what that practically looks like on the ground.
Because the notes paint this very hopeful, very grounded picture of what's already around us.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this because right now, sitting behind your closed garage door, there's probably, I don't know, a $200 extension ladder that you will use for exactly 20 minutes this entire year.
Yeah, maybe 30 minutes if you're ambitious.
Right. And 3 doors down, your neighbor's probably getting in their car, about to drive to the hardware store to put the exact same ladder on their credit card.
It's kind of insane when you frame it like that.
It is. We usually picture waste as, smog hanging over a city or plastic washing up on a beach. But these notes argue that the most profound, staggering waste on Earth is actually invisible. And it's sitting quietly in our own homes.
It is a landscape of isolated potential. I mean, we've built this entire modern infrastructure based on the idea that every single household must be a fully equipped, independent island.
Which is a massive shift in how we view the stuff we own. The notes suggest we had to fundamentally redefine the word surplus.
We really do. We tend to view surplus as just extra stuff we have to store in the basement.
Or shove into the garage.
Exactly. But the note suggests we need to view it as a dynamic system that is currently stalled. It's not just extra stuff, it's trapped potential.
I was actually trying to visualize that stalled system earlier, and I kept coming back to a AA battery sitting in a kitchen junk drawer.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Because as long as it is just rolling around in there, next to some old takeout menus, it isn't powering anything.
And just taking up space.
Right. But it is actually slowly losing its charge anyway. It's experiencing the slow decay of its potential energy. The moment you snap that battery into a circuit, say, into a flashlight, it suddenly has purpose. It illuminates the room.
What's fascinating here is how that battery analogy applies directly to human capital as well.
Wait, human capital? Like skills?
Yeah, exactly. A specialized power drill in a garage is an unconnected battery, sure, but so is a brilliant skill locked inside someone's head on a Tuesday afternoon.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that.
Right. If you have a profound professional knowledge of plumbing, but you're just sitting on your couch watching television, and your neighbor 2 houses over is having a panic attack because their sink pipe just burst.
That skill is a battery out of the circuit.
Precisely. It's a resource that isn't connected to the need.
But I have to ask, isn't that the exact American dream we've been sold for the last 70 years?
The totally independent island. Absolutely.
Yeah. The ultimate marker of success has always been complete individual ownership. Like, I have my lawnmower, you have your lawnmower. Total independence.
And we build tall fences, just to be sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I need to fix my sink, I hire a company. I don't go knock on my neighbor's door. We've been taught to avoid that kind of entanglement entirely.
We have, but the notes point out the hidden cost of that exact mindset. That drive for total independence breeds massive, exhausting inefficiency.
Because everyone is just duplicating the exact same stuff.
Right. Think about the psychological burden and the financial burden, honestly, of having to own, maintain, and store every single tool you might ever conceivably need.
It's exhausting.
It really is. The shift these notes advocate for is moving from isolated individual ownership to active network utilization. It changes a resource from a static object taking up space into a dynamic flow of community wealth.
So you aren't just hoarding a resource, you're actually participating in a system. But, getting people to suddenly open their garages and start handing out power tools requires a massive leap of faith. People are super protective of their stuff.
Oh, they definitely are.
So how do these networks actually start? You can't just declare a neighborhood an abundance network on a Tuesday and expect everyone to buy in.
No, you definitely can't. You have to start with a resource that forces human interaction. And the source material highlights the perfect starting node, which is food.
Specifically like fruit tree harvests and garden surplus.
Yes, because food has a biological ticking clock.
Right. A power drill can sit on a shelf for 10 years.
And the pressure to share it is basically zero. But a basket of peaches from the tree in your backyard, or a massive haul of tomatoes from a summer garden, That introduces urgency.
Because if you don't connect that surplus to a need within a few days,
It literally rots. The perishability of the resource overcomes the social friction of reaching out to a neighbor.
that makes a ton of sense. The tomato basically forces your hand.
It does. It gives you an excuse to knock on the door.
But I read the phrase garden surplus exchanges in the notes, and my mind immediately pictured traditional charity.
Like a food bank.
Yeah, exactly. A localized food bank. Someone is the generous donor, and someone else is the needy recipient. Does the material differentiate between sharing with a neighbor and just, standard top-down charity?
It does, and that distinction is actually the bedrock of the entire concept. Institutional redistribution, which is the traditional charity model, is fundamentally a vertical transaction.
Vertical meaning top-down.
Right. There is a benefactor with abundance at the top, an institution in the middle, and a recipient with a deficit at the bottom.
Which, is obviously necessary sometimes.
Oh, it's absolutely necessary for crisis intervention. But it inherently creates a power dynamic. The
Okay.
two parties rarely meet, and the recipient is often made to feel diminished.
Right. Charity feels like someone handing something down to you from a pedestal.
Exactly. Peer-to-peer sharing, on the other hand, is horizontal. You are just leaning over the backyard fence. It is highly reciprocal.
Meaning it goes both ways.
Yes. The person offering the lemons from their tree today might be the exact same person who needs a handful of rosemary from your garden tomorrow.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because that reciprocal nature completely flattens the power dynamic.
It levels the playing field entirely.
Yeah. There is no stigma of needing something if everyone on the street is in this constant flowing state of both providing and receiving.
And beyond the mere transfer of calories, these garden exchanges are performing a secondary, much more vital function.
Which is?
They are harvesting social trust. You make eye contact. You have a 5-minute conversation about the weather or the soil. You are building the micro connections that make a neighborhood actually function as a community.
Rather than just a collection of adjacent houses.
Exactly.
Which is honestly a brilliant workaround for modern social anxiety. Because knocking on a stranger's door to ask for a massive favor is terrifying. Those people would rather just go buy the thing they need.
Absolutely. The barrier is too high.
But walking over and saying, hey, my zucchini plant has lost its absolute mind. Please take some of these before they take over my porch. That is the easiest, lowest stakes icebreaker in the world.
It really is. You are almost asking them for a favor by taking the food off your hands.
Right. You're the one in need, basically.
And it acts as the gateway interaction. You establish that you are a safe, reasonable person to exchange perishable vegetables with.
And once that baseline is set,
You become a safe person to exchange much more complex, valuable resources with.
okay, so a zucchini is low stakes. But handing over a $300 pressure washer requires a totally different level of trust.
It does. It's a huge jump.
Because my immediate thought is liability. If my neighbor borrows my ladder and breaks it, things get incredibly awkward, incredibly fast. How do these networks bridge that gap from perishable food to expensive durables without falling apart?
The source material addresses this by framing it as an evolution. The notes describe neighbors helping neighbors slowly evolving into structured community sharing networks.
So it's not an overnight thing?
Not at all. The trust infrastructure built by the tomatoes is what eventually handles the weight of the ladder. You don't jump straight to the pressure washer.
Right, you start with the apples.
Then maybe a rake. Then perhaps offering to help lift a heavy piece of furniture. By the time the pressure washer is requested, the social contract is already deeply established.
Okay, let me try an analogy on you because this is how my brain is visualizing this evolution from random favors to a structured network.
I'd love to hear it.
I am picturing this as a localized physical internet.
A physical internet. Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that.
So on the digital internet, you have servers holding information and you have routers. When you click a link, a protocol directs data packets through a network of cables to your exact computer at the exact moment you request it.
Right. The system handles the routing instantly.
Exactly. It is entirely about routing resources efficiently. Now, take that offline and lay it over your street. Your neighbor's garage is a server. Your living room is a server. Your brain, with all its skills, is a server.
I like where this is going.
But instead of routing digital data packets, this abundance network is routing a physical power washer, or a specialized wrench, or an hour of drywall patching expertise to the exact house on the street that needs it at that exact moment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Your analogy highlights the critical difference between a latent neighborhood and an activated community.
A latent neighborhood.
Yeah, a latent neighborhood is one where all those servers are disconnected. The resources are sitting right there, but there is no routing protocol. The bandwidth is terrible.
Because nobody knows what anyone else has.
Exactly. If I need a specialized wrench, and I don't know you have one sitting 50 feet away from my house, I have to get in my car, buy a new one, use it once, and put it in my server room, my garage, forever.
The latency of that is awful. It takes hours and costs money. Whereas in an activated community, I just send a text to the neighborhood group chat, and you walk the wrench over in 3 minutes.
And the friction of finding the resource disappears. Because the routing protocols, whether that's a WhatsApp group, a shared neighborhood spreadsheet, or even just a physical bulletin board, they make the invisible surplus visible.
Which solves the routing problem completely.
It does. But we shouldn't overlook the psychological barrier to pressing send on that group chat text. The notes touch on reducing physical waste, but doing that requires overcoming a massive hurdle of vulnerability.
Because asking for help feels like admitting defeat.
Unfortunately, yes. We are living in an era of profound, crushing social isolation despite being digitally hyperconnected. We hide behind our blinds.
We really do.
To ask a neighbor to help you patch drywall, or to admit you don't own the right saw to finish a project, is to admit a small vulnerability. You are saying out loud, I don't have everything I need to survive by myself.
And in a culture that worships the self-made independent island, that feels like a failure.
Exactly. But when the community responds by providing that resource, it rewires that exact psychology. It reinforces a deeply comforting, ancient human reality, which is that you aren't supposed to have everything by yourself.
It's supposed to be part of a web.
Yes. Connection reduces emotional isolation just as effectively as it reduces physical consumer waste.
It changes the goal from being a fortress to being a node in a network.
Wow.
Which leads directly into the ultimate outcome the notes build toward.
The broader impacts.
Right. We've moved from the apples to the tools, past the vulnerability of asking for skills. The source material explicitly states that all of this practical sharing is actually the mechanism for strengthening resilience.
A very loaded word.
So what does this all mean? I want to dig into that word. Because when I hear resilience in the context of neighborhoods, my mind goes straight to, doomsday preppers.
Probably you were bunker.
Yeah. Building a bunker, stockpiling canned goods, hoarding solar panels, and relying on absolutely no one. How do these everyday sharing methods offer a different kind of resilience?
This raises an important question about how ecology and systems theory define resilience versus how pop culture defines it.
Okay, break that down for me.
The prepper mentality is the ultimate isolated server. But in ecology, true resilience isn't about isolation. It is about redundancy, fluidity, and interconnectedness. Consider a monocrop tree farm versus an old-growth forest.
Okay, so the manicured rows of identical trees versus the wild, tangled woods.
Right. If a disease or a drought hits the tree farm where every tree is isolated and functioning entirely on its own, the whole system can collapse overnight. There is no backup.
Because they aren't helping each other.
Exactly. But a natural forest is a complex, entangled web. Trees share nutrients, water, and stress signals through underground mycelial networks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If one area of the forest is stressed, the network literally shifts resources to compensate. The forest absorbs the shock.
So if we apply that to a neighborhood,
Yeah.
a tree farm neighborhood is a street where everyone has their own lawnmower, their own tools, their own independent savings, but absolutely no connection to the house next door.
And if a shock hits that street, say, an economic downturn, a sudden medical bill, a blown car transmission, a siloed neighborhood leaves you completely stranded.
You are a single tree facing a drought.
Precisely. You either have the personal wealth to fix the car, or you go bankrupt. But an abundance network functions like the old-growth forest.
Because the resources are already moving around.
Yes. The resources you need to absorb that shock, the tools to do a home repair yourself, the neighbor who knows how to fix a transmission, the extra dinners from someone's garden when grocery money is tight, they are already fluidly connected.
The network itself acts as a shock absorber.
When resources are fluid rather than locked away in individual homes, the baseline capacity of the entire community rises dramatically.
That makes total sense.
You don't all need to be wealthy individually to have access to a wealth of resources collectively. You can absorb external stress much better when the burden is distributed across 30 households instead of falling squarely on one.
That totally reframes the entire concept of waste reduction for me.
How so?
Well, it means reducing waste isn't just a chore or like a moral obligation to the environment, though obviously keeping plastic out of the ocean is great. But in this context, waste reduction is just the natural, inevitable byproduct of a highly efficient community network.
It happens automatically.
Right. You aren't consciously agonizing over reducing waste. You are just utilizing the physical internet of your street efficiently. And when you do that, the waste vanishes on its own.
The rotting fruit is eaten.
The idle ladders are put to work. The unused skills are deployed.
It is an organic optimization of what already exists. The surplus was always there, it was just trapped. Freeing it makes the community incredibly difficult to break.
Let's track the through line of what we've uncovered in these notes, because the progression is just brilliant. We started by looking at a closed garage door and realizing that an unused tool is just a battery waiting for a circuit.
A stalled system.
Right. And from there, we looked at how something as simple, perishable, and low stakes as a basket of garden tomatoes acts as the initial spark. It forces this horizontal interaction over a backyard fence, which harvests the social trust needed to move forward.
It overcomes that modern instinct to remain hidden.
Exactly. And once you break that ice, the trust cascades. It scales up into sharing expensive durables, sharing vulnerabilities, and creating this vibrant routing protocol of neighbors helping neighbors.
The physical internet.
Yeah. It ultimately forges a forest root system, a resilient, shock-absorbing community where you don't have to face a crisis as an isolated island. The true value of the material you brought us today is the realization that a massive hidden wealth is already surrounding you right now.
It really is everywhere.
You don't have to buy it, you just have to connect to it.
It requires a profound change in vision. Which leaves us with a thought I'd like you to consider after we wrap up today.
I love a good final thought.
If an abundance network relies entirely on making the invisible visible, like knowing someone 3 doors down has extra lemons or a specialized wrench or a talent for patching drywall, what is the surplus in your own life right now that is currently invisible to your community? What is the battery in your junk drawer, and how could you signal it to the people around you today?